I know that here in Montreal, we're trying to get the Quebec government, once it gets off its high horse of protecting the French language and pay attention to some of the minorities in this province, they might be able to pass a law to to declare Chinatown as a historical site. But the way I see it, they'll probably declare two buildings inside Chinatown, but the rest of the area in Chinatown, for the politicians, is still prime real estate. And gentrification makes a lot more money than protecting the heritage of a tiny, dying community. And so this is something that we have to continue fighting for, despite the fact that we won redress, or partially won redress, back in 2006.
Yeah, just the certificate of my grandfather who never received, and our family never received any redress. But in any case, more importantly, as you said, if we take a look at what are the lessons we can bring to today, as William said, within the Chinatown Chinese community, we have to be on guard for these token, token signals that are given by different levels of government.
I believe for myself, for one, I'm born in Canada, and my name is Jean-Noel, so my name is already French. And I'm born here. Long story short, my dad's name is Noel. Filipinos or many cultures will have a second or a junior, right? But being born here, I was given the French Jean, and that was their reasoning for giving me Jean-Noel. So part of it is, I'm sure this is how, for many cultures coming in as well, it's you're going to North America, coming to Canada. Part of it is you want to follow certain customs, but at the same time, how do you do that without losing yourself? How do you do that without losing your identity or your culture?
I mean, growing up here, I was mainly surrounded with Filipinos, so it wasn't really an issue until I went to CJAP, and I think that's when I realized how much of a minority I was.
But nevertheless, the issue of identity awareness is very important for everybody, but especially important for minorities. Because to be aware of who you are, I think it's the first step to taking pride in your own identity. And once you have pride in your identity, then you can engage in various struggles to defend your identity and to defend your community. That's all I have to say.
Just want to say I find it very interesting because this documentary, which was created decades ago, and we still have the same struggles, and you're talking about the evolution of how it's been going through, and for ourselves as well, like you said, as a younger generation, we're also going through our own struggles, but no matter what, as immigrants or children of immigrants, we always have this identity that we're not really sure of in the beginning. And like you said, I find as soon as you how to put this in words? I wouldn't say as soon as you connect with those identities, that's like you said, it's great when you feel proud of it and you understand who you are or where your culture brings you, right?
Within the Chinese community, it took us the longest time in order to find out that lost part of our Canadian history, just because our elders did not want to speak about it because of the shame and stigma. And this trauma actually became intergenerational. And I'm sure it's the same thing, with other Asian communities. The shame and trauma that, these first generation of immigrants had to face is the indignity that they had to face. But they didn't want to pass it on to their kids. But unfortunately, it was. Whether it be the separation of families, because for the Chinese community, it was the fathers that had to go overseas and leave their families behind. I know with many, Filipinos, it was the women that went overseas and had to leave their family behind. But this intergenerational trauma manifests itself very much when the families reunite. And then you see, like, what a gap there was. The only thing we have in common is that we're seen by mainstream society as the other. So it's important for us to know our roots, because as much as we want to be part of them, right, we will always be seen as the other.
Just start by saying you belong anywhere you want to belong to. So do not never feel like you don't belong anywhere. As a Filipino Canadian, I'm Filipino, I'm Canadian. Where do I belong? I belong on this earth, right? So never feel like you don't belong. Sorry.
But I'm saying, like, even though I spoke French fluently, I did my bachelor's on French, right? I still face barriers, and it wasn't because of my French, I can tell you.
But I think the biggest pressure on the Canadian government was the United Nations Declaration, or soon-to-be formed Declaration of Universal Human Rights, which stated that no country who will be signing this declaration should have any discriminatory legislation, in the books. And so, based on these two things, the pressure from Chinese Canadians and the pressure from the international community, Canada had to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act. And I think this whole issue, or these two methods, still exist or still applicable to fighting for equality and human rights throughout the world.
We realize that a lot of people will come because they want to find a connection of the Filipino connection. So we have a lot of regulars that will come, even if they're not from the South Shore. They'll come on the weekends very, very often, and they just enjoy being in the space because they feel a connection to the culture.